Hi everybody, it's Katie back with another episode of my vlog, and it's Sunday, so it's time for the Cinema Club Sunday Roundup. We didn't watch that many movies this week, only 5, a little bit because we're still kind of burnt out on watching a movie every day from October, but also because the kids discovered Ash versus Evil Dead. So we've been watching that. And Sean bought me a copy of Final Fantasy VII, which the two of us were going to play by ourselves. And the kids kind of poo-pooed when they first saw it and were, oh, it's got cheesy graphics, or what's this gameplay? And then they started watching me play it and immediately got sucked in, of course, because Final Fantasy VII is an awesome game. So we've actually been having this really sweet family video game playthrough time, which is eating into our movie time also, but them's the breaks, right? But we did watch 5 movies this week, or rather we watched 4 movies as Cinema Club, and I watched 1 movie by myself without the rest of the gang, but we'll talk about all 5 right now. Starting with Run, Lola Run from 1998, directed by Tom Tykwer. Sorry if I'm saying his name wrong. This is the German movie that is the fast-paced story of Lola and Manny. They have to come up with 100,000 marks in 20 minutes or Manny's going to get killed by his boss. He's a gangster, obviously. That's not a normal job. And it is a fast-paced, really creative, really interestingly told story. I remember when this movie came out in 1998, it was pretty bizarre because all these people who are not normally fans of art house or foreign films, the type of people who normally would balk at reading subtitles, were recommending this movie to me. And I was like, okay, normally I'm the one recommending this movie to you. All right, let me check it out. And of course it was amazing then, and it has held up really well. It is dated in the sense that, boy, it's very late 90s in terms of the costumes that the characters are wearing, the techno soundtrack, the early computer animation that's used in parts of the movie. They really stand out as being a product of the late 90s. But other than the fact that it's dated in that sense, it holds up incredibly well. We had a ton of fun watching it. The kids loved it. They really got into it as soon as they realized that the narrative starts to kind of loop around and repeat itself. It's really fun. It's really unique amongst other movies of the time or since. I don't think I've ever seen a movie that I would say is like Run, Lola, Run. It's more like a long format music video, I think, than a proper movie, but it just works really, really well. There's a lot of sort of dealing with ideas of cause and effect, or kind of the chaos theory ideas of how one little change can change everything. And the way that they handle that storytelling is pretty interesting. So I'm going to leave a little mysterious just in case you guys haven't ever seen Run, Lola, Run. It's another one of these movies that the less you know about it going in, I think the better it is. It's kind of funny. I actually put it on our list because, as you guys know, I've gotten really into running in the last few months. And I actually have put quite a few running themed movies on our list. I've got Chariots of Fire. I've got The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. I've got a bunch of other ones, but I knew Run, Lola, Run was going to be kind of the most upbeat and fun and fast-paced out of all of those movies, and so that's the one that I wanted to share with the kids. So totally recommended. Again, if you've never seen it, definitely check it out. If you haven't seen it but you have fond memories of it, you might want to revisit it, because I loved it just as much watching it this time as I did watching it 22 years ago. So that's a great one. The next night after that, we watched The Untouchables from 1987, directed by Brian De Palma, of course, starring Sean Connery, Robert De Niro, Kevin Costner, actually in like his first major movie role, and frankly, the only role I've ever liked him in. I really can't stand him as an actor, but he's great. As Elliot Ness in The Untouchables, which is the story of Elliot Ness putting together his team to go after and stop Al Capone from rum running during Prohibition. So this is a great film. It's just stacked with incredible actors. In addition to De Niro, Costner, and Connery, it's also got Andy Garcia and Charles Martin Smith in it, rounding out the team of the Untouchables. And it is great. Everyone in it delivers a great performance. The directing is great. The story itself is great and incredibly well written by David Mamet. The score is by Ennio Morricone, so it's just perfect and bombastic and wonderful and really full of a lot of emotion. And it's interesting because it's ultimately it's a cops and robbers type of story, but they really, really take the time to humanize the characters. And there is this side of sort of Elliot Ness, the family man, that comes out also. So it has this kind of sweet, tender feeling to it that a lot of this type of, gangster movies or cops and robbers type movies don't really tend to have. It's got a much heavier emotional component to it. It always makes me cry. The kids admitted that it made them cry multiple times during the movie. So it's great. De Niro is great as Al Capone. It's just a great movie all around. Another one of those total classics that if you've never seen it, definitely recommended. And if you have seen it but you haven't revisited it, go back and check it out again. It held up incredibly well. We had a ton of fun watching it. There's no like cheesy computer special effects or anything that's aged badly. So that's a really, really, really good one. And it was funny because I had it on the list for a while because I knew the kids were going to like it. And I'm a huge David Mamet fan, and I had no idea that movie was written by David Mamet until we sat down to watch it. And I was like, oh my God, well, no wonder this thing is so good. It's written by David Mamet. So speaking of David Mamet, I, by myself this last week, watched his film Heist from 2001. I watched it broken up into two parts, and I actually watched it while I was running on the treadmill, which is not the greatest way to watch a movie. I will admit that to begin with. But Heist is an incredible movie. It's starring Gene Hackman, Danny DeVito, Delroy Lindo, Ricky Jay is in it, R.I.P. Ricky Jay. Sam Rockwell. It's got a great cast, really great actors who do an incredible job in their roles. It is written and directed by David Mamet, who, if you know his work and you love his work, you love all of his work. If you know his work and you're a little bit annoyed by the way he writes, you probably don't like any of his work, but I think he is an incredible writer and an incredible director. Some of his top hits are, he wrote the play Glengarry Glen Ross, and then he wrote the adaptation for the screenplay. He didn't direct that one though. He's written and directed a bunch of movies. Some of my favorites are House of Games and The Spanish Prisoner, which go right in line with Heist. They're all about con men, all kind of fucking each other over. And I don't want to say how many twists and turns there are because, if you say there's a twist, then people are looking for the twist. But boy, David Mamet movies are really marked by, there's not just a double cross going on. There's usually like a triple or quadruple cross between some of the characters in the more crime-based films that he has done. So this is one of those movies. It is ultimately a heist movie. A bunch of different gangsters working together, not by choice. There's a lot of personality conflict going on, and a lot of really slick setups for little jobs and things that the gang are pulling in the movie, where they, come in and one person's doing this over here and another person's doing that over there, and it's so perfectly timed that everything that just goes super smoothly and they don't get caught by the cops, and it's great. It is a David Mamet film. So again, if you know his work, he has a very specific way of writing. He's a playwright originally. And so the dialogue in the movies that he's written really sounds more like a play than like a movie, if that makes sense. There's no fat in the script at all. It's very tight. You need almost every line to drive the action forward. And it's really cool to have watched him over his career move from things that are just strictly dialogue based, very, very much could be just staged on a stage with no special effects, nothing, to something like Heist, which is more I mean, it's very dialogue driven, but it's also very action based, and it is a big budget action movie. So there's, you get a lot of fun, exciting scenes and explosions and shootouts and things like that, that you wouldn't have necessarily in a stage play. It's a fantastic movie. I don't want to say too much about the plot. As usual, I think the more you don't know going into this movie, the better. And again, I would encourage you guys, if you watch this movie and you find yourself curious about David Mamet's work, watch House of Games. That's my favorite movie that he has ever done. And it's really incredible. But I think you can even start there. I mean, if you want to kind of dip your toe into something that you haven't tried before and you like my recommendations, I would actually watch House of Games first, and then move towards Heist. Heist is his biggest budget, biggest grossing, most popular movie that he's ever made in his career. So it might be the most accessible for people. But again, I think if you're watching my vlog, maybe you're into trying something a little more challenging. It's not really challenging, but if you're used to watching an Avengers movie, maybe a David Mamet dialogue-driven movie might not be your bag, right? But again, I think you guys like this stuff. So Heist, super recommended, but also check out other films by David Mamet, specifically House of Games, one of my favorites. I think I'm going to show it to the kids next week because I really, really, really love that movie. So yeah, check out Heist. Again, not to be confused, there's a bunch of other movies called The Heist or Heist that came out in a different year, but this is Heist from 2001, again, starring Gene Hackman, written and directed by David Mamet. So there's that one. To return to the regular Cinema Club schedule and not just talk about what I'm watching on the treadmill, we finally followed up on Dirty Harry with its sequel, Magnum Force. This is from 1973. It's directed by Ted Post. It was actually written by John Milius, but apparently he didn't want himself credited on it because he didn't like the movie he didn't like what they did with his script. So that happens. It's a pretty fun one, though. I do agree with his criticisms of the movie, which I'm not going to say what they are because spoilers. But it's a really fun, another Dirty Harry movie. We've got Harry Callahan patrolling the streets of San Francisco. Someone is going around and offing like the worst criminals in San Francisco. Excuse me. And Harry's job is to figure out who's behind these, vigilante killings of these sort of top criminals of the city. And the way the story unfolds is pretty interesting because it is a police detective story. Again, I don't want to tell you too many details about what's actually going on because spoilers, but it's very much in the same vein as the first Dirty Harry movie. It is a sequel, so I think it's not as good, but it carries the torch pretty well. And of course, it becomes a whole franchise with multiple movies in it. And so I think as a standalone movie, Magnum Force might not be great, but as a bridge between the original Dirty Harry and the rest of the movies in that franchise, it works really, really, really well. As I've said before, I grew up in the Bay Area. I was born in the mid-70s. So when I watch movies like Dirty Harry or like Magnum Force, it's super duper nostalgic for me. I'm seeing things that, the place where I grew up looking like the way it looked back when I was a little kid. And it's just always super nostalgic for me. And this movie, hilariously, there is a scene in a shootout inside of a Cost Plus. You might know Cost Plus nowadays by their new name, which is World Market. But back in the day, they used to just be called Cost Plus. And it's pretty funny because at first you see the Cost Plus sign on the outside of the building, but then they take it inside the building. And I started cracking up and I was like, look, Sean, it really is Cost Plus because it's all like little baskets and like oil cruets to put on your table and just exactly the same type of stuff that they're still selling at Cost Plus. So that made me totally crack up. That scene is pretty great. I mean, it would be great even if it wasn't a Cost Plus. But the fact that it's in the Cost Plus just made it for me. So Magnum Force, if you enjoy Dirty Harry and those sorts of movies, definitely check out Magnum Force. It's a great entry in that series. And then last night we wrapped up our week of Cinema Club with Clan of the White Lotus from 1980. This is a Shaw Brothers Kung Fu movie starring Gordon Liu, and it is fantastic. You guys, you know we love Kung Fu movies, and you know we really love funny Kung Fu movies around here. This is one of the funniest that I've ever seen. And Henry really summed it up nicely when we finished the movie. He turned around from his chair and looked at me and said, man, it really seemed like those guys just had a ton of fun making that movie. And that's exactly what it felt like. It's like a bunch of people who are really professional at what they do, having a great time making a movie. The loose plot is that Gordon Liu is a monk who has to battle against this evil priest who's named White Lotus. There's a lot of groin punching that goes on in the movie, and White Lotus has the ability to suck his testicles up into his body as a form of self-defense against all of these groin punches that keep going on. Gordon Liu's character has to learn embroidery style kung fu. Embroidery fist is what it's called, and acupuncture fu, which is acupuncture based kung fu. It's really, really, really great, and just like a top example of the form and especially of the type of kung fu movie that doesn't want to take itself too seriously. So we had a ton of fun watching that one. Super duper recommended for anyone who's a kung fu fan or Gordon Liu fan at all. If you've never heard of it or seen it, definitely want to recommend Clan of the White Lotus. That's the original title. It was released in America as The Fists of the White Lotus, but they're the same movie. So check that one out if you're into kung fu movies at all, because we had a ton of fun watching it. So that is it for Cinema Club for this week. Like I said, next week, I think I'm going to show the kids House of Games. And I know we're going to have another low movie week because we're definitely going to be watching more Ash versus Evil Dead, which if you're an Evil Dead fan and you haven't checked out that show, watch it. It is so good. And then, of course, we got to keep playing Final Fantasy VII. So that's what our plans are for this next week coming up. I would love to hear about whatever you guys have been watching or what plans you have to watch a movie in the future. I always love to talk movies with anyone who wants to talk about them with me. So go ahead and comment down below. Let me know what you guys have been watching. I will be back in a couple more days with another episode of my vlog. Until then, everybody, take care and stay safe out there. Thanks for watching.